Good morning. Just doing a little mic check.
Hey there, Vanessa.
ZetaChain. I don't know who's behind you right now,
Yes,
but how are you going? How's your day going?
it's good. It's good. Happy Friday. This is Dallas JC at ZetaChain.
Nice, nice. Um, will we have anyone else from ZetaChain coming up today?
Yes, we're going to have our head of product, Be True, who will be joining shortly. He's in the waiting room, actually.
Cool. Sounds good.
How's your day going?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm getting ready for a big trip to Europe, actually. So,
Lovely.
been packing and running around and looking up COVID restrictions and all that fun stuff that comes with traveling in 2022.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, hey, True, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Um, and who else do we have up here? Multichain Nomad. Hello.
Hello, good day. It's afternoon here in Nigeria.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, let's just hop right in. Because people will be filtering in throughout this. So I'm gonna get started. I have a lot of questions for you guys. So let's start with the pretty basic question of how most people introduce Twitter Spaces. So can you just tell me a little bit about each of you? Just tell me a little bit about yourselves and your role at ZetaChain, and kind of how you found your way to ZetaChain. And then after that question, we'll go into what actually ZetaChain is and more on like the things that differentiate it. So, True, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. And first of all, thank you for having us on. Excited to be here. Um, yeah. So my background is a combination of engineering, design, and product. I joined ZetaChain September of last year, so close to the beginning of ZetaChain, and uh, yeah, have worked kind of across all functions: engineering, design, and product. Right now, my focus and I guess title, I'm the head of product at ZetaChain, so I uh, set direction for both our user-facing things and also uh, things around protocol development and uh, kind of just things across the board. And prior to this, I was uh, working on my own startup 2018 to 2020. We sold it at the end of 2020, and that was in social, so a bit different from crypto, but some uh, some rhyming factors. And after that, I was bouncing around from startup to startup, doing some advising and consulting, um, building out some engineering and design functions, as well as doing some more like larger project IC work. And yeah, so that's my background. Jonathan, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I did an early stint in Web3 back when the space was pretty nascent, but for better or worse, went the Web 2 route and spent most of my career in enterprise software and then traditional management consulting. But I always had the feeling to get back into Web 3, specifically really intrigued about the workforce aspect of it, how organizations come together, especially in Aragon's space when you think about DAOs and just the organizational aspect of it. So I always had an inkling to get back into Web3 and found the ZetaChain team early this year, right after they released the white paper, and we're working on the first testnet release. And there's an opportunity to head up community, and it was a great fit because what's really exciting about us, which we'll dive into more, is that the L1 blockchain we're building will be a public utility and a DAO eventually. And so there's a really cool opportunity to align people around that and build a massive community. So it's been a great journey so far.
Yeah, and since you were starting to just touch on it a little bit, maybe you can just kind of transition into explaining what ZetaChain is. So it's much newer than I had thought, because you said you just found it this year when the white paper came out. So yeah, just tell me a bit about what ZetaChain is, thesis, when it started. Yeah.
Yeah, so ZetaChain started last year, sometime in the summer, and the elevator pitch one-liner is we are a new blockchain, L1 blockchain that's focused on interoperability. So what that means is through ZetaChain, you can transfer data and value between any chain, and it's chain agnostic. So when you compare it to other solutions like Cosmos, IBC ecosystem, or equivalents, where they require some sort of compatibility implementation to be able to communicate with other people in this sort of interoperable bubble, we are able to connect to any chain, even non-smart contract chains like Bitcoin and Dogecoin, and layer in both the ability to transfer data and value between them, as well as deploy smart contracts on ZetaChain that can orchestrate data and value from a single place of logic uh, across all connected chains. And that latter part is something that really does not exist right now and unlocks a wide variety of new applications and more secure applications of or iterations of existing things that have been implemented in uh, more fragmented and more risk heavy ways, if that makes sense.
Okay. Interesting. So yeah, I was curious on kind of the difference between Cosmos, because when I first looked into you guys, I was like, okay, this is a lot of this is reminding me of Cosmos a bit. And so it's like it seems like you guys have sort of identified the problem of blockchains as we know them today are too maybe siloed and fragmented, and you're looking at ways to connect them. Is that kind of
Yeah,
TLDR?
yeah, that's the TLDR. And
Okay, cool, cool.
yeah,
So Cosmos, their thesis is they connect by an IBC, and they connect by an uh, interblockchain. Yeah, that's what it stands for. So they connect by lots of bridges, and every app is their own chain kind of thing. But what you guys are doing is slightly different from that. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So for us, we connect directly to L1s, L2s, doesn't really matter with our technology and are able to securely pass things between them. So, yeah, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Solana, Tron, EVM compatible chains are all uh, things that we can connect to. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can have a smart contract on ZetaChain that can actually manage assets on those chains. So
Oh,
you could
interesting.
do like Bitcoin smart contracts equivalents, like a stacks equivalent, um, on top of just being able to make something like a cross-chain DEX, like a cross-chain Uniswap with a single smart contract.
Wow. Okay. So you guys are connecting to existing chains that don't have to necessarily be in the Zeta chain ecosystem. And then how is this different from a bridge?
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of definitions of bridges. We can go into a couple where we differ. So the most basic bridge is tied to a specific set of chains and or assets, and is focused specifically on value transfer. And most of the implementations to date, especially the ones that are now kind of notorious from being exploited or hacked, adopt this model of locking and minting, or wrapping, if you've heard of that. And
Yes.
so what happens there is you have a vault. Say you have a bridge between Ethereum and Polygon. You have a vault on Ethereum, and users or whoever is providing this liquidity will lock a bunch of assets into a vault on Ethereum, and then mint wrapped assets on Polygon. So then, rather than being equivalent, you have wrapped Ethereum on Polygon, you have regular Ethereum locked now on Ethereum. That stuff on Polygon, wrapped Ethereum, now is susceptible or at risk of whatever risk is associated with that vault. And as we've seen in hacks like Wormhole, Nomad, although like you can have as much audit security precaution as you want, but having assets locked in a vault puts you at risk to being exploited. And so that's like the first type of bridge. I guess the next layer on top of that is more, I guess people have expanded bridges to be, to maybe encompass, what do you call them? Communication protocols. So things like layer 0 or IBC. And so those are specifically focused on transferring data, potentially value, but usually just data. And I can talk more about the discrepancy there between different chains. So
Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. So a traditional bridge, and this is, I mean, bridges, I feel like bridges have been freaking me out a lot recently because of all the hacks. And this was kind of a learning experience for me. Like when the wormhole hack happened, I tried to kind of dive in and understand it. And something that I learned that I didn't know beforehand is that when you're using a bridge, you're not moving you're not moving assets really from X to Y. You're putting your assets in X, locking them, and then getting an entirely new asset on Y, right? And so it's like that bridge, it's such a target because it's just a ton of locked assets. And even just thinking about the amount of like wrapped Bitcoin floating around in the Ethereum ecosystem, for example. And I think like ZetaChain is trying to do, or like Rune is trying to do kind of that native, having more native assets as opposed to the wrapped assets. I don't know if that has any similarity to what you all are doing at ZetaChain, but like that's kind of where my mind's going a little bit of trying to plug into the native assets as opposed to relying on wrapped assets, which is of course, a whole very complicated thing. Dallas, JC, feel free to jump in at any time as well, as I'm kind of like firing these questions at you both. So yeah, if you have your own take, or not your own take, but your own way of explaining it, Dallas, JC, go ahead, because I'm still kind of like wrapping my mind around everything. This is super interesting.
Yeah, I'll defer to the more techies on the team, but I will say, and it's in our white paper, we were very inspired by ThorChain, and our lead engineer actually helped build that protocol.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but Brandon, if you want to jump in on some of the similarities.
Yeah, no, I think you're like hitting it right on the target with regards to ThorChain and the whole wrapped asset conversation. So value transfer with ZetaChain differs from the classic bridge because we basically support when you transfer value but through ZetaChain from chain to chain, there is no wrapping. What it looks like is actually your asset, say you're swapping USDC on Ethereum for Matic on Polygon, your USDC would swap to Zeta, which is our new coin, and then that would be burned and then minted on the destination Polygon, and then that new Zeta would be traded for your target asset. So there's no actual minting of new assets. Zeta is controlled by the L1 blockchain, like the core protocol. So that lets anyone using it appreciate a wide variety of security benefits versus when you do either like a data transfer sort of bridge or the classic traditional wrapped bridge. You're just never putting your assets at risk in a vault. You're just trading against native assets on each chain, which for users is really nice because you just don't have that overhead, the mental overhead of, what if tomorrow this vault with everyone's assets goes away and then your assets are now worth nothing because those are completely drained.
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's such a vulnerability. And as a quick reminder for everyone in the audience, if you have a question, just DM it to the Aragon Project Twitter account and we'll see it there. And then I can ask those. So just write out your question on DM and I can see those. Okay, yeah. So is this kind of a deep liquidity situation like ThorChain where Rune is tied to every asset? Is that sort of what's going on here with Zeta?
So I guess yes, in some ways. So for a decentralized exchange application like ThorChain, a ThorChain equivalent could be built on top of ZetaChain, and that would require that double-sided swap that I mentioned earlier. But since ZetaChain is a just general smart contract platform on top of that, you can manage assets in different ways. So that's like one basic approach, but you could also deploy a smart contract on ZetaChain that's just managing vaults on each connected chain, and then you would never even have to trade against Zeta. You could just emit or let people deposit whatever assets you're trading. So that's more of like a managed approach. But yeah, I think in terms of ThorChain versus ZetaChain, at the base level, they're kind of similar in technology, but ZetaChain layers in that level of logic and being a blockchain where developers can build a lot more complex things versus just that specific application of trading assets.
Okay, I see. Yeah, this multi-chain stuff is so fascinating. And I was just listening to something on Celestia just a couple days ago, and they are doing something multi-chain. I don't know. I didn't pick up a ton on exactly what they're doing, but I'm not sure how similar they are to you guys. But I feel like this is kind of where the space is headed. This more like modular, composable, multi-chain future. I just feel like I'm taking in all of these different ideas and all these different organizations that are working on kind of like a multi-chain thesis. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. I guess to be transparent, I haven't looked super deeply into Celestia, but I guess there are some similarities in the vision, at least, where these components of crypto ecosystem are modular and should be able to be, not fungible, but for users to be able to kind of traverse freely. And like if blockchain has certain specialties like performance or high compute or whatever, you should be able to leverage that in some way and still be able to appreciate the security benefits of a different blockchain when you need it. For them, I think they serve as like a general consensus layer, and then other smart contracts or chains can kind of leverage that consensus layer and then do the compute that they want to, and then kind of bubble it up down to their consensus layer. I don't know if that's a completely sound understanding of what they do, but for us, it's similar, where you could leverage a super high performance, high compute blockchain for certain logic. So you could deploy a smart contract on there and then do whatever crazy stuff you need to do, and then have the result of that application just send something back to Ethereum mainnet, for example, through ZetaChain, and then you could appreciate the like resulting security benefits of the end result, but still have that cheap, fast compute on like a Solana or whatever you're using. And this is more for developers, but for users, it's more just being able to pick and choose and kind of leverage the benefits of whatever is going on blockchain wise in the ecosystem.
So do you guys, is your kind of thesis for the future of blockchains that bridges won't really be in use anymore? Like, are there any kind of, like, what do you guys see sort of with this more omni-chain, multi-chain, cross-chain, whatever phrase you want to use with this future? Like, what do you see like a daily kind of user habit would look like? Like, maybe they're not going over a bridge. What are they doing instead?
Yeah, so I think that the end vision of this is a user can create a wallet of sorts, whether that's like a MetaMask equivalent or a ZetaChain built wallet, and they onboard through that, whether it's like they send assets from a fiat on ramp, like Coinbase or whatever. And once they get assets, it doesn't really matter what chain that's on for a user. They might be able to see it if they want to inspect, but from receiving assets, getting assets into that wallet, you should be able to just transfer things, buy things, regardless of what chain it's on. So that entails a couple of things. So if you're doing NFTs, we envision that in the future, NFTs will be omni-chain too. So you could just transfer them from Ethereum to Solana and back, and it would still appreciate that uniqueness factor. So then, yeah, if you happened to have a Phantom wallet, you could just buy something on OpenSea, which just supports EVM compatible chains. Or actually, I don't know if they added Solana support yet. But yeah, you could just buy it and receive it into Phantom without the need of interacting with a bridge per se.
So this would kind of make the like chain maximalism stuff, that would kind of make that fall away, I feel like, because you can just interact with anything all the time, no matter what, as opposed to right now where we're kind of, if you're doing DeFi on Ethereum, you are doing DeFi on Ethereum. You're not switching around between chains, because that's just going to take so much gas and time and open you up to so much more of like an attack surface and so much more risk. But if we have this more like ability to kind of plug into different chains with the same wallet, it doesn't really matter what chain you're using. That's just kind of like an off the cuff thought. I'm not sure if that's something you guys have thought about or talked about, but yeah, I can kind of see that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, something about being able to connect to all chains is anti-maximalist in a lot of ways, at least the current state of things. So, yeah, it won't be about like, oh, this game is only on this chain. You have to get a wallet on this chain, lock all your assets on this chain, for just the sake of like being on that chain. There will be some, I don't want to call it maximalism, but some utility in specific blockchains. So, like I was mentioning earlier, like Ethereum has stronger security guarantees than some other younger chains, a lot less decentralized, whatever. But those chains have certain properties, or maybe even certain like social graphs remaining from this era of maximalism, that like a user might need to move things to that chain to do something.
Yeah.
So it's about like being able to take advantage of opportunities to use things freely. So we believe that there is a use for, or a space for many blockchains to exist in the future, for varying reasons, performance, security, certain like ways of programming, perhaps, that unlock different applications. But a user should be able to just do that freely.
Nice.
Basically, like utility maximalism rather than other forms of maximalism.
I like that. I like that a lot. So you all are still in testnet, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, cool. So I was kind of curious, like, so then I assume, all right, you're still in testnet. So then Zeta, probably the token isn't on the market. There's probably no like wallet yet. Is that like, what's kind of the state of your product and chain and all of that?
Yeah, so the chain is under active development. We do have a live testnet, and we'll be announcing mainnet plans soon. For the token or coin, so when I mentioned before how like swapping and sending data works, it's hinged on the Zeta coin.
Right.
So when we go mainnet, that entails that the coin will be also available publicly and traded publicly. But yeah, we haven't released any public details about timeline for that yet.
Cool. Okay. So, and you all would have your own, like there would be kind of a Zeta wallet, or would it be like you use your existing wallet to connect to the Zeta chain?
Yeah, so Zeta for cross-chain stuff would exist on every chain. So there would be Zeta and ZetaChain integrated products on Ethereum mainnet. So you could interact with a DEX, for example, that's built on ZetaChain through MetaMask. So you would just send a transaction as you would sending to Uniswap, and then that could result in you receiving assets on a different chain if you wanted. And then the next step would be a ZetaChain specific wallet. So if you're interacting with contracts on ZetaChain, there might be some benefits of being able to view all of your assets across all chains from a single place, interacting with different types of blockchains, EVM and not, from a single place. So that's the vision for the ZetaChain specific wallet. But at a base case, as a normal user with your Phantom or MetaMask or whatever, you could interact with ZetaChain with whatever you already have.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Very cool. So when I'm just like trying to think of kind of the security implications of this because it's like you take the security of the least secure thing you're interacting with, right? Like that's how security stacks up. So I'm kind of curious how, like, when, like, what are the implications of the security of kind of this like switching between chains, or is it there are no additional implications or areas of attack because you're really just swapping Zeta for Polygon and then Ethereum for, or and then Zeta, or I said that totally backwards. Say you have Matic, you swap it for Zeta, and then you hop over to the Ethereum chain, you swap your Zeta for Ethereum. So yeah, I just kind of want to open up the like kind of security rabbit hole a bit because I'm curious on that end of things.
Yeah. So I think if you want to do a deeper dive, our white paper does a pretty good example or pretty good job of going through security examples and then also our architecture. At a high level, that point about swapping to Zeta and from Zeta is a big factor. So because the blockchain controls max supply, both at a smart contract level on each connected chain and in the actual ZetaChain blockchain level, we're able to do kind of like multi-level supply checks and a lot of other security layers. I don't know what to call them. But so as a user, risk-wise, your funds, like once they've settled on a destination chain, after that, like whatever 1 minute transaction time between sending, confirming on the source, and then confirming on the destination, once your funds are at rest, they aren't at risk. As far as like blockchain level, like huge reorgs, that kind of affects a lot of that blockchain. So there might, like if a entire Polygon were to go down, then like maybe all of your assets on that blockchain might be at risk, but the other connected chains would not be because of that smart contract blockchain level those checks. So yeah, the way we think about it is, yes, if you send assets to a connected blockchain that ends up being completely reorged or hacked, then there's like a lot more at stake than just the Zeta. There are some things that we can do to restrict, like we wouldn't allow that chain to send beyond like what already existed. If there were to be an exploit where someone could do an infinite mint on that specific chain, it would not ripple to other connected chains. So yeah, it's really lowering risk for users, where your risk is mostly just at the chain that you're on.
Okay.
Level. Yeah.
There's not as much of a risk of like pollination kind of like a bad wrapped asset or something, because you don't even have to deal with wrapped assets. So okay, that makes a lot of sense. So how do you guys do gas fees? Do you pay in Zeta? What does that look like? I mean, I kind of assume your proof of stake chain, but how does that whole system work for you all?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that before, but ZetaChain's built on Cosmos SDK, so Tendermint consensus, so similar to some other top 100 blockchains, consensus layer, and yeah. So with that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was your question?
Fees, proof of stake,
Fees,
that kind of thing.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So proof of stake based on consensus. For fees, you can pay, depending on the application. It's kind of up to the application to decide how to do it. So as a developer, you could either hold an amount of Zeta and pay the minimal, like ZetaChain specific gas fees with your pool of Zeta for your users, and they would only interface with other assets. Or you would do that swapping mechanism. So users would pay USDC or whatever they're interacting with. A portion of that would convert to Zeta to pay for the destination fees and the gas fees on ZetaChain.
Mm-hmm.
And then ZetaChain would just manage it all together in a bundle. So for a user, you're really just still sending whatever asset you would normally, but under the hood, there will be some utilities for developers to do that swapping and paying mechanism.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, so stepping outside a bit of the more technical aspects, do you see any particular use cases that dApps can use with Zeta? So I know you mentioned like a cross-chain DEX earlier, which I think is super interesting, could be cool to dive into. I'm also thinking about, even like a cross-chain DAO or a cross-chain NFT project. I'm just curious if you have any sort of blue sky thinking ideas of what could happen on this next layer with ZetaChain.
Yeah, so I think base level, there are some finance related applications like DEX, lending, and maybe a couple others that will be kind of critical to the ecosystem, or critical for the ecosystem. And then for NFTs, as I said before, we envision the future of NFTs is where everything is omni-chain and can be transferred between chains pretty seamlessly. So things like cross-chain NFT marketplaces, or marketplaces where end users don't even have to worry about what chain they're buying from, or selling on. That I think will be really cool. And then, for other pieces, the DAO aspect is something I think is more underexplored for cross-chain stuff, and maybe it's a matter of people don't have the tools to build that right now yet. But for a DAO to be able to manage assets across different chains, to perform actions, vote on things from different chains, will unlock a lot of opportunities for growth for DAOs. And then that also ties into identity. So on Ethereum or Ethereum compatible chains, you have ENS, right? Like Ethereum name service. But with something like ZetaChain, you could have an omni-chain name service where your username, like at Bob or whatever, would be able to manage a wallet or an address on every single connected chain. So if someone wanted to send to Bob, they could just be like, send to Bob on this chain. And then it would be able to route it to the right place. And then also you could just use that single wallet that's tied to Bob to send to any place. So there wouldn't be like Solana has their own name service, Ethereum has their own name service.
Right. It wouldn't be so fragmented.
Exactly. So you would really have a single wallet that you can like really bolster security on, and that could act as your route to anywhere in the crypto ecosystem.
Everything. Yeah, that's super cool. One of the big issues with DAOs operating on chain is that if they want to save gas fees and maybe deploy on Polygon, then their whole treasury has to be a bunch of wrapped assets, you know? Like they have to have their treasury on Polygon if they're going to be a DAO on Polygon, you know? And so then that opens up a whole other attack layer for all those wrapped assets. And then you have to be bridging, transferring on and off Polygon from Ethereum anyway. So I feel like cross chain for DAOs could be like crazy, crazy cool. Just even from a treasury management, asset management perspective. Yeah, that's something that really excites me for sure. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, sweet. So I feel like this overall kind of idea of like what ZetaChain embodies is just like a crazy upgrade in UX. That's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Like, it seems that this is just going to make everyone's lives so much easier. You know, just not having to worry about all of the bridging that has to happen and about choosing your chain and like especially people coming into the crypto space who aren't necessarily Web3 native and this is all totally new for them. The cross-chain stuff and trying to wrap your head around all of it is really difficult if you don't have this kind of like easily like pluggable kind of solution.
Yeah, UX is a huge driving factor for what we're doing. Like we want to build the most seamless experience for both developers and in turn users.
Mm-hmm.
So things like developers being able to deploy in a single place and manage things across chains, like not having that overhead of deploying on every single chain.
Yeah.
Will unlock, I think just reducing that development overhead will let developers build cooler stuff. And then on top of that, you can actually build things that you couldn't before. And then, yeah, users, yeah, I think like it maybe at some level, if you're doing really complex stuff, it matters what chain you're on. But for the everyday user who's just, buying an NFT or maybe depositing into something for yield or those sorts of more basic interactions should not be as siloed or like walled gardens.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And for someone just coming in, you're like, why is this siloed? You know, like it feels confusing to be doing anything on the internet that is siloed. I feel like that was a big hurdle for me when I first started of kind of trying to understand why I had to be like cognizant of where certain things were residing in the blockchain space. I'm curious what the developer experience is like. So so you guys use Cosmos. So are you using like Rust and Go? Like how does the developer experience for someone coding on ZetaChain, how does that differ from like an Ethereum smart contract developer?
yeah, so the blockchain is built on Cosmos SDK, so like the validator node code is written in Go.
Mm-hmm.
For smart contracts, as an existing Solidity developer, you could actually deploy smart contracts on existing chains, and I think that's the lowest barrier developer experience. So you
Yeah.
implement a send and receive and a revert handler, so 3 functions on your smart contract, and then that smart contract could be deployed on any chain you want to connect to. And then you would have cross-chain built into your NFT or whatever your contract is. For smart contracts directly on ZetaChain, we actually haven't released public details of what that looks like, but you could expect a similar experience, except you would only have to deploy in one place. yeah, and yeah, we'll release more details. But as a Solidity developer, you should be pretty good in what in building
Interesting.
on.
Okay.
Yeah,
So a Solidity developer would only have to add 3 functions into their contract for it to be compatible with ZetaChain, essentially?
yeah,
Wow.
correct.
Okay, that's super cool. That's really interesting. Um, nice. Yeah, I think just making it as easy as possible to deploy things on your chain or using your chain or be compatible with it is just such an unlock for bringing in new innovation. Just like making things as simple as possible. Yeah, I love that. I'm totally on board with that. So yeah, I'm kind of running out of questions. Do you guys have any other like cool things on the horizon that I haven't touched on that you want to share? Maybe some details on, I'm not sure if you all have a DAO associated with you or if you have um, any kind of like community, but yeah, just if there's anything else that you want to discuss or talk about how people can get involved or get ready to buy Zeta when it comes out. Yeah, what are some things like that?
Yeah, so I guess the one thing we haven't really touched on is more details about the testnet that's live right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
um, last week we released a user-facing application that lets the community engage and test the testnet, and you can report bugs and uh, do transactions on the actual Athens. We're calling it Athens, but the testnet. Um, and in doing so, well, first of all, that's at labs.zetachain.com. So you can sign up, like verify your wallet and verify your Twitter, and you can actually earn what we're calling Zeta points. So that's a way to track your progress as a community member and tester. Um, and by
Cool.
doing transactions with the testnet, reporting issues, like anyone can really contribute. And we've already like been able to like help stress test, battle test a number of things on the network. So it's super helpful for anyone curious about ZetaChain or like wanting to have a route to contribute to us, and be able to track your progress as a contributor. Uh, so that's super exciting. We've had, I think, 60,000 plus people testing with us so far. So um, yeah, we're trying to get as much for as many people as possible to help test. I think having more diversity and like voices
Mm-hmm.
mix is super useful. Um, so yeah, I think that is the biggest thing right now, that people can come join us and like chat with us, help us test.
Cool. Nice. So what is that's labs.zetachain.com?
Yeah,
Okay.
labs.chain.com.
Nice, nice. And so you guys have beyond this test net, do you have any kind of like public roadmap, anything like that? Or is it more like will be released in the future?
More the latter. We might release
Mm-hmm.
some more roadmap details over the coming months, but yeah, the next big step is getting to mainnet, and yeah,
Cool.
we'll definitely be announcing things about that in time soon. So very exciting.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That's super exciting to hear about. I don't have any questions from the audience. I'm just checking on that right now. JC Dow or Dow's JC. I said your name backwards. I don't know if you have anything to add or anything you'd want the community to know about ZetaChain.
Sure, yeah. Well, really the key focus is continuing to open source and build out smart contract examples and the documentation for the dev ecosystem. And then, of course, Zeta Labs, which is this test bed for omni-chain use cases, and the one that's live right now that True was referring to is the native cross-chain asset swap, which is super exciting because we've been talking about all of this stuff this year and educating the world on omni-chain, but there's nothing like actually presenting a real product that people can
Yeah.
use. Yeah. And yeah, it's been super successful. 60,000 users and growing since last week. And the gamification system is super helpful in that people are providing feedback and we're building more awareness. And that in turn gets people educated on omni-chain. So we're really appreciative of that. And in addition to that, we have always like fun contests happening. We just did a t-shirt design contest. We have a TikTok challenge that's happening right now.
Nice,
And
nice.
yeah, you mentioned building out a DAO, like definitely still early, but we're thinking about how can we provide other means to contribute to the protocol through writing blog posts, doing creative stuff. We're on D work right now, and we've actually looked at Aragon for inspiration around how we could set something like that up.
Cool.
Yeah, and we have a thriving ambassador program. I see Mina on the call and Sagatorio and more than 10 others around the world that are helping doing translations and stuff. So it's coming together one day at a time.
Awesome. Yeah, I've noticed that you have almost all of your content is translated into a ton of different languages, which is really awesome
Mhm.
for just reaching the world. Yeah, that's super cool. That's great to hear about all of that stuff. I'm out of questions. You all have answered all my questions so well. So yeah, I think unless you have anything else that you want to touch on, I think we can probably wrap it up.
Good. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot, and I would just say thank you for having us on. We're big fans of Aragon and the project and the work that you've done over the past 5+ years. So it's a real pleasure, and we're glad we're on your radar.
Yeah, thank you. This was super fun. And when you all are ready to get that DAO started, you know who to talk to. So sweet.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. All right.
Well,
Well, I will see you guys around Twitter, I'm sure. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
thanks, Samantha. You're a great host. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.